Thanks for being with me today. I'm excited to be with Mr. Troy Muljat, and as you know, every podcast starts with a word. And as you know, I try to pick the word that sort of frames the discussion we're going to have, and the word for today, Troy, is extreme or extremes. As your story will come out, the highs of the high, and some very, very, very challenging times that represent the extremes of wow.
Yeah.
It's a new low, a new challenge. So the word of the day is extremes, and our journey started. We were just trying to figure out the exact year, but I think in the late 80s.
Yeah.
At Seattle Pacific University. Take it from there. There you are as what, a freshman or sophomore?
Yeah, I think it was a sophomore year, and a buddy of mine was like, "Gosh, there's some real estate classes being offered. Sign me up. Let's go. Let's go listen to." And so it was Dave England was the first class, and then
Yeah.
you came in, and I took your very first class.
Yeah.
And I came in probably a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because I thought maybe I knew a few things, which I didn't. And you really taught us how to look at the world very differently, and there was always a way to get something done. And I mean that really helped launch my way of thinking moving forward. We were watching Dead Poet Society and standing on desks. I don't know if you remember that or not, but
I do remember
we were,
that class delivered my very, very first email that I ever had. At the end of the class, they said, "We've got you an email," and I never had an email. I didn't know what that was even, and it was OCMC at AOL.com. Oh, Captain, my Captain. And I
Captain,
went,
my
"What is
Captain."
this?"
Oh,
And they said,
Captain, yeah.
"Oh, you got to watch this movie." I went, "What
Yeah,
movie?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Oh my gosh.
Isn't that a cracker?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, that's where the journey started. That's where we met.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a few years.
And it's pretty fair to say that you got a real estate license when you're 18.
Yeah.
And from a professional,
Which means nothing.
yeah, which means nothing, right? Yeah, but from a professional standpoint, this has been the heavy lifting of your entire career since then. Talk to me about your family. You were raised in a real estate family, and I'm really curious to know, like, how did that play into your own playing out of this in terms of did you see all the various hats of real estate when you were young and could kind of choose, or did you carve your own way out of what you saw?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great question. Yeah, I always say I was bottle fed real estate. Dad was a broker since he was 18. Very involved, very successful in the residential arena. Owned a couple of different companies, and great journey. Learned a lot from him. Growing up, I would spend time at the office during the summers when I wasn't commercial fishing. That was probably the real business that my grandfather did, and then my father did as a kid. But that industry has been changing for many years, and so real estate was the family business for Dad, and I didn't want to sell houses. Like I was like, oh man, this single family business, so I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder and really wanted to make my own way. And so commercial real estate is what I gravitated to. Became a commercial appraiser right out of college. Was trained in that area, and there's some good stories, some pros and cons there. But it did teach me a unique core. But I went down my own path. I went down my own path of commercial real estate, and very quickly in the appraisal arena, I was we were valuing 50, 100, $200 million portfolios, and there was big numbers, and I was making $1 million errors on spreadsheets, and it was fun.
Right.
It was fun.
Fun.
It was
Right.
fun.
Nothing like $1 million
Yeah,
error to
right. Yeah.
start your
I
day
made a
out.
few. I made a few.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Sorry. Sorry.
Oops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Forgot that.
Yeah.
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 You know, one of the things that I've marveled at, that the umbrella, this huge umbrella of real estate, oh my gosh, its tentacles and associated industries are just endless.
Yeah.
And therefore, there's the generalists who do a little bit of each. There's the specialists, but I've never met somebody that's entrepreneurial that doesn't recognize that there's kind of a place for everyone under this umbrella.
Yeah.
To just, and it's kept my attention and my interest as a student for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
It's never been boring. And just when you think you've got a handle on something, you know, you think about, for example, Airbnb. Nobody knew what that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now it's like a thing and an industry, and VRBO and how the evolution, now pad split is starting on the East Coast, coming this way, and all of the various platforms that are coming out are changing the entrepreneurial possibilities in real estate. It's just redefining itself constantly. And so it's never been boring, you know?
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. I mean, technology changes. I mean, there's just been so many great opportunities, and we're always learning. Like people are like, man, geez, Greg, you know a lot. But having that attitude of like always learning and have to be nimble, have to adapt or die, and have to look for the opportunities and constantly learning. I love to learn. I love to learn. Yeah.
Make an argument from a landlord's perspective. I've got a couple ideas that I think I know you're going to say, but I want your seasoned take on this. Make an argument from a landlord's perspective for commercial versus residential.
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. I love the higher returns that I can get usually in the commercial arena. I think a lot of people are afraid of what commercial is. I don't really understand it. They don't know it. And so that mastery ability to be able to dive in and really understand the nuances, find a retail client that wants to have something built. They don't want to own real estate themselves. They need somebody to build it for them. Looking where that margin is, and then building structures and long-term leases for them. Knowing, I always say, people are scared of commercial because what am I going to do when it's vacant? What am I going to do when it's vacant? But if you believe in your location, you believe in your data, your property, and you put the right plan in place and you execute, no fear. No fear. Yeah.
Competence takes away fear.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things you said so casually there, you just said it so matter-of-factly. I want to make sure everybody heard it, that it's not just buying existing real estate and figuring that out, that commercial real estate, but you actually start with a client and say, what is your needs? I'll find the dirt, I'll build it for you, and then I'll lease it to you.
Yeah.
So the building component, the contracting component, I've often said, construction is real estate. Real estate's construction. Everything you call real estate has a roof on it for the most part. And so building commercial for a client. Give me an example of that. I know you have lots and lots of clients that you've done that for, where you've worked with that client to actually build the box that they need. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So many different case studies. I'm trying to think of one or two. Starbucks. Everybody, I get calls all the time. I want to put a Starbucks in a certain location. They're a great tenant. certain size of space that they need, but they have a certain location and a certain footprint that they want. And so sitting down with them and going through, and I may have to spend 10, 15, 17 different site plans for my one project that I built for them to get the right site plan. And once it was done, the rent was the minor issue. Getting them to what they needed and where they wanted, listening to them and adapting, they were super happy. But it just takes some time to make sure you get the site plan and the layout correct and ready to go. Other tenants, most of my leases are in place before, sometimes I even own the dirt. So I've signed those leases. Those are done, ready to go. Occasionally I'll spec some commercial, but usually it's just a matter of executing. Most of the heavy lifting is done.
If you build a plaza, Troy, what percentage of that do you want pre-leased, or what anchor tenant do you want in place for you to feel comfortable to build the whole thing out partially spec?
Yeah, that's a good question. Depends on the location and the size of the project. So, a smaller neighborhood center, 40, 50, 60,000 feet, I'm going to want 75 to 80% of it pre-leased. So, and that 20% spec, I'm going to have a pretty good idea of what other mom and pops, local tenants, other people that I can go out and get. But I network with retail brokers. I network with retailers themselves through the International Council of Shopping Centers. I became a master student in who represents who. And so when I go to those meetings, I'm just finding out what they need. And then I'm just putting the puzzle together. I'm just putting the puzzle together. So, and then it's just executing, just getting it built. It's just a numbers game at that point.
You see a lot of, let's take Simon Malls, for example. You see Simon Malls opening a lot of outlet malls right now. Talk to me about the difference of those from your investor perspective. Like something is, if you took locally, like Alderwood Mall, okay, not an outlet mall, but then you go just up the street, 30 miles or so, 20 miles, and you've got, the Simon Outlet Mall.
Correct, yeah.
Different retail type entities. Talk to me about the difference of those.
So many different types of retail. Retail is also reinventing itself constantly. So outlet malls in general are strong, doing well. There are different brands that have literally they manufacture their own products just for outlet malls. So they're going after a certain type of consumer. They want a certain radius, a 135 mile radius of population. They're looking at who's spending what. And that's just a certain type of tenant, a certain type of tenant and a certain type of product. And depending on the market can be very successful. But they also have a cycle. In general, in some areas they're booming, and there are other areas they're busting. So you have to understand your demographics. Who's there? Who's going to be there? What part of the life cycle is that mall? Am I generating? Do I have synergy from other tenants, other traffic, other residential coming into the market? It's very symbiotic.
I have several students who've made the choice you have to really just 100% focus on commercial. And one of the distinctions that at least we're becoming very aware of when we look at potential acquisitions is when you look at an existing mall, the combination of retail tenants versus service tenants.
Yeah.
And it feels as though the non-blue ribbon retail tenants are struggling right now. Basically, the idea is that if you can buy it from Amazon and it can be delivered on your porch tomorrow, the smaller ma and pa retail type tenants are having a tough time.
Yeah, I would say definitely a certain type of retail you have to be cautionary on. There's no doubt. There's other bread and butter retail that people need and will continue to need. So it's funny because retail, people say, "Gosh, you're into retail." I mean, isn't Amazon taking over the world? retail online sales are only about 12% of all goods and services right now. A lot of room for growth. But when you look at the last 20 years, we really haven't built hardly any new retail. We've reinvented retail. We've ripped some retail down. But when you look at the total amount of GLA, gross leasable area, in retail, it's actually about the same. Hasn't really gone up or down. And retail vacancies in general are very low. But that there is a type of tenant that is struggling. People that I know are going to be competing a lot. They have a dream. They come to me with a dream, and I have to really assess whether that dream is worth leasing them 1,500 square feet for 3 years or 5 years. If it's worth investing some tenant improvement dollars on. And so that's always that's the hard part. We built a big project starting in July of 2008. Started a retail project.
Good time.
Still own it today. Best project ever. Executed the plan, 85% pre-leased. But there was one tenant there that I knew when I signed the lease, I'm like, he's gonna fail. There's gonna be some failure here. So, but you look at the whole project as a whole. You make some good decisions, you make some not so good decisions, but overall, the property, the location, the demand was there. Right. And continues to be there.
That's the demographics that you're talking about. Yeah. Do you feel more comfortable with service-related tenants, meaning something that can't be delivered on the porch, the medical, check medicals, the clinics, all the service-oriented businesses? Do you feel more comfortable with those?
Yeah, absolutely. I have lenders. I have land leases with fast foods. I have coffee operators. I have service people, the H&R Blocks of the world. Yeah, they may not be using the space on a regular basis, but they still want that presence. They want that signage. They are still going to need to meet with some clients. People still getting haircuts.
Right. Exactly.
They're still needing. Medical has been a big boomer in the last 10 years, moving into retail, and so when a hospital district came to us and said, we really want this location, man, we were fat 10-year deal. We built them out state-of-the-art facility, and they, we helped them finance the whole thing and worked out great. Kidney dialysis. I have 2 DaVitas. Great tenant. Absolutely. Fitness ebbs and flows. People are still going. You have to be a little bit cautionary. I've had several fitness companies, some good, some not so good. So it depends on the cycle, depends on the location, depends on the business and the operator.
Right. Which is, I think, in part why, at least from an overall evaluation standpoint, you're going to look at everybody's books and records. You're going to study their tax returns and look at all of the credentials and credit and things. But there's something about the intangible person behind the leadership, the customer service that, what makes one hairstylist, you need to book 3 months out.
Yeah.
They're so in demand. And another one doesn't do that well, and that's the intangible component, but it puts it in a service industry. And yet if you can be dealing with people who this is their life and calling, wow, that's the holy grail in my mind. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned hairstylist, because one of the first tenants I leased to, her name was Clara, and she came to me, and she was a manager at a national, and she came to me with a dream to open up her own facility. And I bought into the dream, but I also bought into her, because even though she didn't have a nationwide financial statement. She had a dream, she had a passion, and I could see it in her eyes that she was going to succeed. And she did. She succeeded, and she grew, and it was amazing. And she'd come to me, and we would talk, and she needed business advice, and we would talk about, how she could maybe make her business a little bit better, give her more free time. And I spent a lot of time talking with her, don't get the opportunity to do that now. I'm fortunate to have too many tenants, but
Right.
it was still really it was a great case study on believing in someone. That's not always the case, but that was pretty cool, and I still keep in contact with her today.
That's
It's just
awesome.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you, as a part of your commercial tenant lease, do you require the tenant to show proof of marketing, show proof of throwing direct marketing back at the community? In other
Mm.
words, not national marketing with a Class A tenant necessarily, but in other words, driving traffic through their own marketing to this location.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a lot of go dark clauses, so if
Mm-hmm.
someone's going to go dark, that's going to create some non-synergy to the center, and so we're going to maybe accelerate the rent. They can't do that. There's just certain things.
Mm-hmm.
We in some centers, one center, we even have a marketing budget where we'll do some promotion and such, and then we build that back through triple nets.
Mm-hmm.
All of our leases will have, depending on the center, will have a clause that make sure that they're open. We want them open, and we want them bringing people in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
that's a
Right.
big part of it. Marketing, it depends. I get tenants that tell me how they're going to market and what they're going to do, and
Mm-hmm.
I have to pick my battles
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with certain tenants, especially some of the nationals, the franchisees.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot, and the franchisees are an interesting type of tenant because a lot of people say, "Man, I'm going to get a." I don't want to pick on a franchisee, but you know, a franchisor that's a nationwide franchisor,
Mm-hmm.
people think that company is signing on the dotted line. They're not usually. It's the local operator that's signing. So you still got to buy into that local operator and not the national brand.
Right.
Few
Right.
national brands also co-sign. Subways of the world, they're on the hook, but you're
Mm-hmm.
still dealing with the local operator.
Mm-hmm.
Still have to qualify them.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that I get blessed to do, I'm losing track, honestly, of how many times. I think over 150 times I've been able to fly to where a student lives, their city, their investment area, and spend a full 12-hour day on the street with them, one-on-one. It's such an enjoyable day, I can't even
Yeah.
tell you. It's not scalable, takes a lot of energy
Yeah.
to line it up and get there and do it, but we're on the street. We're using street smarts. We've done a lot of work prior to that engagement, looking at zoning maps and overlays and
Yeah.
comp plans and on and on and on, right? But when we get on the street, it's enjoyable. One of the things I say almost every time I've done this, I do is identify, well, where's a Whole Foods? Is there a Whole Foods in
Yeah.
this town?
Yeah.
Right? Is there? In other words, there's certain commercial markers
Yeah.
that their R&D is so thorough that it wouldn't be here had they not done a lot of research into the demand and the demographic of the area. And then once they are there and established, the residential and multifamily real estate in proximity goes up in value.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
It's like a beacon.
Yeah.
And to me, that is just one of those simple things to predict where you should be in the next layer of commercial. The mixed use, the residential, the multifamily, some small office, that all of that following plazas like you're building benefits from this economic committed money source, meaning the commitment is the lease and the build out and the structure. They're committed to being here. They're in. This is business now. And everything, like almost like a wave that goes outward, benefits in proximity. I don't know that people think and recognize that about commercial, but it's essentially following the money as the center point of the dot.
Yeah.
And from there, proximity to things like Whole Foods and great services and the kinds of tenants and restaurants and things that that gather together.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
big deal.
we call that shadow anchored or anchored by a grocery anchored center,
Yes.
and the big investors, the REITs, the big money that's chasing some of those larger deals, that's what they're looking for. And so
Right.
they'll pay a premium cap because they know there's going to be 30, 40,000 visits a week to the grocery store.
Right.
And so what other services can you have in and around that center? And so
Mm-hmm.
part of our model has we've built a couple of centers basically abutting other grocery stores, and really what other services can we have that will come in and augment,
Absolutely.
not take away, but augment. Can't compete with them. And then there's certain people that will just say, hey, there's a certain tenant that's going to go here, I know they've already done research, I want to be next to them, Starbucks included.
Right.
So they've done the research, they know the market, I want to be next to them. So certain tenants that I get, I know I'll have other people to come along.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems very logical. It's like live decoys.
Yeah. Yeah.
It brings the rest in.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
of the projects, you've done so many projects. You mentioned one. Maybe that's the one we're talking about. But what stands out as being from start to finish the one of the best projects that you've ever done? Walk me through it.
Yeah, that one in Ferndale does come to mind. There's others that I've sold. We've done really well on condo projects, mixed use. I mean, there's some great, economic ones. But I think building one over the financial cliff, and to me, it just stands out because we executed on the plan, had it pre-leased, started it in July, dealing with everything starting in August and September of 2008. The world was falling to pieces. I didn't think it was going to come anywhere close to commercial. It was a residential issue. Man, was I wrong. And it affected everything. And we finished that building by December of that year, and we were opening. We had the fitness center was open in January, and the bank was open in February of that next year. Everybody thrived. I also don't build the cheapest thing around. I build a quality center that's attracting a certain type of tenant at a little higher rent. So that was the strategy on that particular center. And I also made sure I have plenty of TIs, tenant improvement dollars, to build out a dream for someone. So I had that all lined up and ready to go. Construction loan, perm option, all the financing lined up. And then I communicated through all of that to my bankers, because my banker came to me when all was said and done, and she said, Troy, you were the only construction loan that didn't have to bring in more money in 2009 because you executed on the plan, you exceeded the DCR, you exceeded all the loan covenants, and you communicated very well to us. And
that's a big deal.
it was a big deal. And I didn't realize maybe how close to death I was at some time, but we executed on the plan, and it was great. And we still own that property today. We have communicating, working with your lenders, knowing your loan documents, what options, having a fail-safe. But that was at a time when things were happening, and people would do their construction loans, and then they'd get a great option for a permanent option somewhere else. And so we thought we were going to be that, and then we had to dust off. Wait, we do have a mini perm option here. What does that look like?
Right.
What's our index?
Right.
Knowing what that is and where we're going to go.
That fallback plan was nice.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And it worked.
Always have a second shoot.
Well, and then rates tanked, and so we had the ability to extend our construction loan. I built out of pocket the first part of that project because I hate construction interest. My bank makes me put it as a big fat line item, and I want that number to come in a third less. And so when rates dropped, because Fed was, and our rate was indexing to LIBOR, it was a phenomenal deal for us. And so we really benefited economically because of the Great Recession. Would have worked without the Great Recession, worked even better with it. There were some sleepless nights. There were some sleepless
Sure.
nights.
The
Yeah.
unknown
Yeah.
is, but they're trends.
Yeah.
They're the if-then scenarios in this business. When this starts moving this way, there's an opportunity opening this way,
Yeah.
and to feel that balance is a part of survival, I think, in this
Yeah.
business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
so let's go. We left brain. Let's go right brain. Tell me about your family, because
Mm.
you have a wonderful and somewhat different family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to hear about it. It's awesome.
Yeah. Heather and I have been married for coming on 27 years now in November, and we were high school sweethearts. Went to different colleges and then met again right after college. And then not too far after being married, we started a family.
Mm-hmm.
6 kids.
Mm-hmm.
We had 4 the old-fashioned way.
Mm-hmm.
And then our youngest 2 we adopted. We felt called after our first 4 kids to adopt. And so adoption's a big part of our journey. We're a multiracial family. Little Sadie, we started on her adoption, not even knowing who she was, but we started down a path for 4 years to adopt a little girl from China. In between that long wait, we adopted a little boy from Ethiopia, Luke. So Luke's a junior, Sadie's a sophomore. They're kind of like our little twins from different parts of the world. Huge blessing. Learned a lot about myself through the adoption process. People say, wow, you've blessed these kids. Man, that's so untrue. Like, they've blessed us. Like, we have learned so much.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I have we have a friends who one of our children is named after the dad, and Dick and Dixie Montgomery, and amazing, hardworking people. Dick was a house painter, and their calling was, he'd come to paint the outside of your house, the inside, whatever the painting job was, but he would always find a way to do something extra while he was there that would just bless you. He wouldn't charge you for it. He'd see something that needed being done. It could be cleaning out the gutters. It could be pressure washing the driveway. It could be whatever. But while he was there, he would always do one extra thing to bless you. But the calling card of them as a couple is they had 2 or 3 kids of their own, the old-fashioned way, but they adopted 13 kids. And so I think the total number of kids, it's very close. This was like 15 or 16 kids they had, of every race, size, shape. You know, you just everything.
Yeah.
And Dick was killed in a car accident when he was in his early 50s, and they attended a church in Monroe, and all of the news channels, they had 3 services, and I went to one of them, but it was standing room only. I think they figured there were over 10,000 people that went to Dick's memorial. And being in that service, watching, they called all the kids up front to talk about their dad.
Yeah, amazing.
So emotional. Amazing. Just like
amazing.
But he said, I think the guy said about 10 words all year. He was just a giver, a quiet giver.
Yeah.
They'd get up a little more money and they'd adopt another child. And that heart to do that, and he would say the same thing, Troy. I know he would, that as much as people would say, wow, you've blessed these kids, he would say, oh no, it's the opposite way around.
Right. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
That is absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. And it's a journey, and it's not a journey for everyone. It is a calling, I truly do believe. And we really felt called to do this, and it was hard at times. It stressed our marriage. It stressed relationship with our other kids. I mean, but it's been it's been an unbelievable journey. It's been an unbelievable journey.
Well, and speaking of journeys and journeys that have had that take the word difficulty or challenge to a whole new level, here you are sitting, looking as healthy and wonderful as any human being could hope to be, but you've had a journey with cancer.
Yeah, yeah.
I want you to go all the way back to when and how and where.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I had to reschedule you a couple times to talk to a group in
You
Las
were
Vegas.
trying to get me in a wheelchair, I think,
I
on stage at one point.
I
So
I
yeah,
was I was
yeah,
trying,
yeah,
and we
yeah,
waited it out and
yeah,
finally got you there.
yeah.
But walk me through that, because this is something that I don't think people really understand in a deep way. But I
Yeah.
got to watch you go through this. So
Yeah, it was 2013. We were boating. We were out boating. Had a wonderful time up at Desolation. Came back on our boat, and then I'm always working pretty hard on the boat. I'm making sure everybody's okay, and just felt like I wrenched my back or something was wrong with me, and I couldn't figure it out. And so, multiple different doctor visits, X-rays, MRI. Um, had a doctor said I needed some type of a laminectomy or a discectomy, which is basically I had some degenerating discs, which I do have. A lot of people do. So I had a surgery for that, and thought everything was fine. Had that surgery in December of 2013, and thought everything was great. Feeling better. Went off to a conference, retail conference. Came back from that numb, totally numb. My legs, my waist, my back, numb. Something's wrong. And so that was in May of 2014, and I went in for a full MRI. The first MRI missed the tumor that they found, which was a softball-sized tumor growing out of my spine.
how does an MRI miss a softball-sized tumor?
It's the practice of medicine, Greg.
Oh my God.
It's the practice of
Oh
medicine.
my gosh.
And so when they do a lumbar MRI, this was actually lower than that in my lower spine or sacrum, and so so technically stage 4 cancer because it's in it's bone or in one of your organs. And I had a rare sarcoma called chordoma, and only 300 people a year get that. I'm one in a million. There's scientific proof that I'm one in a million.
I've always known.
It's just there's proof. There's scientific proof. My mom always said that, so there's evidence. And one doctor in the state of Washington that does this surgery. So I was transported down to him, and life changed. I had 2 months of intense radiation. No chemo has any effect on this tumor, so it was only radiation. And then I had a 10-hour surgery. And I ended up having about 5 surgeries. I was at the UW for 35 days. It was, had to learn how to walk again. And then my journey really, after that time, really started later that year. I had in-home care. Trying to adapt and figure things out. I learned a lot through that. But, the 2 months leading up from finding out that I had a softball growing inside of me, I had about 2 months to really kind of get my life in order. And the prognosis for me was not great. I basically prepared to die. I got everything in order. I wrote my final letter to Heather. I wrote my final letter to my wife and kids. And I meant it. And I left the house in tears. I was on the floor crying. Heather picked me up because I did not think I was coming back. So, but here I am. But we say we live for today, and that means something a little bit more to me today than it did before cancer. I wish And being on the other side is actually really cool. It's really cool. I'm on bonus time. I am, uh, I live very differently, very intentionally, and uh, I would say that I wish people had the perspective that I had, but didn't have to go through the pain. There was some pain. There was a lot of pain. There was a lot of oxycodone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was bobblehead Troy, as many people know. I was happy one day, angry the next, didn't even know who I was one day, asleep 18, 20 hours a day. I mean, it was a roller coaster. Yeah.
You
That's
said something very, very profound, and I can just imagine this audience as we've started this with this momentum around real estate and your competence in your life, and just you could feel this success story, and then boom, okay,
yeah.
there's that, but 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 now there's this,
Mm.
and you said I had 2 months to get my life in order, and just processing what that really means. Your business might be in order. Your tenant base might be fantastic.
Mm.
Your but there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and that's I think the when you're facing those sorts of crossroads, it's a whole
Yeah.
different thing. It has to be. And I've got to imagine that people listening to this are just as like, oh wow,
Mm.
I saw this whole thing going to the finish line with, sparklers and roses.
Hmm.
None of us are guaranteed that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I, uh, I really felt it's weird because I felt at peace through the whole thing. I really had a lot of success. Success was building up to that point, and really, my prayer was that God would use me in a different way. He would use what I've got for something for a greater purpose. And I actually truly believe that cancer was a part of that answer because the conversations that I get to have with people that are going through a trial or a tribulation, I understand what chronic pain really is. I understand what being up at 3 a.m. all night in the fetal position saying, I'm done,
Mm-hmm.
in so much pain,
Mm-hmm.
where painkillers don't even matter. I understand what it's like to go multiple surgeries, to learn to walk again. I might not be able to relate to everyone's pain and issues.
But
I know
you
what
know
it's
pain.
like to
Mm-hmm.
deal with the mental
Mm-hmm.
challenges,
Mm-hmm.
to understand what depression really is coming out of something like that. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
so those conversations I look forward to having with other people. When someone says that they've got a trial, and they'll usually start with, they'll come to me and we'll talk, and they'll be like, well, I know my issue isn't as large as yours. I'm like, that's so not true. Like, your issue is major.
Right.
And being able to relate to them and really talk to them in a way that no one else can,
Mm-hmm.
super, super special.
Troy, as I sat and wrote down, a list of those people that I respect the most. Um, there's two things that just jump off the page as I look at the list. There's one is that they've been in the arena.
Mm.
They've they've not just thought about it. They've dove in and okay,
Mm.
I'm doing things. I'm going to see how this comes out. We may win, we may lose, but I'm giving it everything I've got. Number one, they've been in the arena. Number
Mm.
two, there has been adversity that has, in large part, formed their greatest deliverable. Their
Yeah.
their their speech, as it were, in life, their ears to listen, their empathy, their ability to connect and relate, has so been formed by challenge and adversity. And not knowing if you're going to live or die, it doesn't get any more adverse than that. It's all forms of adversity. Um, but it's almost like I don't like somebody if they haven't gotten a little beat up, and if they haven't been in their rain. I I I just don't relate.
Yeah.
But I think that the great ones, just the great ones, at least in my humble estimation, those are the common threads.
Mm.
And this is the greatest of all. Your faith
Mm.
is a big
Mm.
part of what got you through and what keeps you going and what gives you direction. Um, I also think that's
Yeah.
an awareness that is also common.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have their sense of place in this big world of it's one of my students said it so well. It's like almost like he got scolded. He said it's this isn't about you.
Mm.
This journey you're on is not about you. It's about something much bigger than that.
Yeah.
And you've lived that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about me. It's about something bigger. And I think, when I was laying in that hospital bed, um, hours before the surgery, I just felt this overwhelming amount of peace. I was just really at peace with, really ready to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And whether I was to live the 10-hour surgery or not, I was just totally at peace with it. No fear was there. And that was just a super special moment that's really hard to put into words.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Probably the hardest part about going through that is just your family and your kids and dealing with all of the other stuff that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
When I found out I had cancer, things that I had been putting off became laser focused. Like it was so imperative that I had to get that stuff done. And I probably got more done in that 2 months than I had in the rest of previous of my life. It was amazing. Um, I challenge other people, mainly men, to write their final letter. Like, here's your diagnosis. Like, write your final letter and mean it. What does that mean? And kind of taking them through what that letter looks like to their significant other, to their children, to a friend, to their spouse. It's hard to do. It's hard to do. But man, it is rewarding. Rewarding.
If given more time, you start living out the contents perhaps of that letter that this is what I wish. Well, you still have time, so you can make that wish come true.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
that's that is amazing.
It's been a journey. It's been a journey. Still is a journey. Because my rare cancer, I get scanned every year. I was just in an MRI and a CAT scan 5 days ago. And 9 years ago this happened. Scans were clear. It's all good. But they will scan me for the rest of my life just due to the rarity. I'm in multiple national studies and such for this type of rare cancer. And technically there's no cure, but there's been people that live very full lives for a long time period. It's just so rare that it's an orphan cancer, and so there's just not a lot of information.
Wow. Well, I want to switch back to the left brain side. You have companies, Troy, that are unrelated to real estate. People, I think, at least a lot of people know you for your real estate development world. But you have companies that are high tech as well.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your interest in that and what you're doing in that world.
Yeah, the technology piece was a big piece we were working on over about 10 years ago, and software in and out of the real estate field. That company got rolled up into another larger entity that I'm a shareholder in, and then we had an investor, Goldman Sachs, come into that company, and so that's on its own journey now. We still have some technology that we create, and I would say is just kind of more of a side hustle than anything. I do mentoring and training in the commercial arena. I have a property management company. That's probably where I spend more of my time than not, and so that's a big part of what we do. We have a construction company, we have a development company, we have a maintenance division, yeah, education stuff that we do. Yeah, a variety of different things. I sold the residential brokerage, the family business, and so I sold that, and I'm really just focusing on my main core stuff. Heather did tell me I had to give something up last year. She said, "You're busier than you were." We always say pre-cancer, post-cancer. So
Right.
you're busier now post-cancer. And I said, "No, I'm not." But she said I was in denial. So
was
I did give some things up. She's super wise and smart, and she knows me better than anyone. And so it's been great. It's been a good year. I cleaned up a partnership, bought out a partner, and sold one business, and really able to focus on the most important stuff.
And then there's always salmon fishing.
Oh man,
That
that's really what I want to do when I grow up. I just want to be a salmon fishing guide. Yeah, right.
It might wreck it if you
Oh
became a
my
guide.
goodness. Yeah, probably true. Probably true. I actually love to take people out salmon fishing, even if it's for their first time. I love there's nothing like the thrill of bringing a 25, 30-pound king salmon aboard, someone for the first time. And so every year when I go fishing, multiple times I go fishing, but usually when I do my big trip up to Vancouver Island, I try to bring someone new that has not experienced that. And it's fun.
One of these summers, I'm going to go down to Kenmore Air, and I'm going to rent a 180 on floats, and I'm gonna call you and say, what cove are you in? Because I'm gonna come find you.
We will be fishing, and I think we'll be there for a couple of weeks next year. It's already booked and ready to go. So I'll give you the dates, and you come on it. Bring whoever you want.
Just
bring
tie up alongside, and
whoever you
there
want.
we go.
Yeah. We're throwing back more than we can keep.
I love it. You are a student. You read. You study. I want to just have you throw out a couple books that everyone you know should read.
Oh my goodness. I can't just do a couple.
Yeah.
I'm a library guy. I'm a student, and I have 2 different offices, and they're both packed with books. And so depending on when someone comes into my office or there's an opportunity to gift someone, it will depend on that type of book, whether it's real estate related, their career, whether it's more trying to spend time on mindset, whether it's leadership focused. And so there's 2 is impossible. 2 is impossible. The last few years I've been really focused on business building and team building, and so Traction is a book that I've read 3 times, and I've got my leadership team reading it, and it's really on the entrepreneurial operating system. And that's a book that I think is been instrumental for me, and really for me and for my teams. I've got over 50 employees now at one of my companies, and really trying to fire myself from every different potential job that's there, and really allow them to flourish. And that's how we've set this company up. And the entrepreneur operating system is really, it's an operating system of how we speak, how we talk, and how we work together, and how we keep each other accountable. What's the culture like? What are those core values? We hire based on those core values, and we fire when someone doesn't align with those. So that's been a really good book, and it's really more of a journey than like, hey, here's 5 things to implement. It's really a long-term commitment. So we're in the middle of that commitment. Gosh,
Traction.
Good traction, good to great. I mean, for real estate people, Tom Wheelwright's books are really good on depreciation. I'm a huge cost seg depreciation guy. Letting Go Mindset is a great book that I've taken people through, because we get stuck in the agreements that we make and we hold on too long, and we have to let go.
In the agreements we make with ourselves.
Oh man,
Right.
I've got agreements today that I don't even know about. I got to work through. I'm sure.
Right.
So, yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
What was I thinking?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But bringing the right people around you to be able to
Mm-hmm.
really speak into you and learn and know when that is. I have a private board of directors, and I meet with some of those people, and one of them is a financial person, and his job is to tell me the real story. So it's good.
Well, that's a segue into the next question, which is the influences, the personal influences of your life. Who's been among the significant influences when you go all the way back in your life and your career? Who do you think of that has influenced the way you are today more than anyone else?
There's just a lot of people. It's hard to pick one, but my grandfather was a fisherman. He was born a fisherman. He died a fisherman, and everything comes back to fishing.
It does. Fishing is a metaphor to everything.
And so he fished for his grandsons, and I got the opportunity to fish with him for 7 seasons commercially, per seine boats, and I really learned a work ethic of up at 3, pitch fish all day, pitch fish till 2 a.m., sleep an hour, start over. I learned a work ethic from him. I learned process systems from him. Fishing, routine, doing it a certain way. I learned he would get out his chart book for 50 years, and he'd be able to tell you where the fish were. Fish are in 4-year cycles. The fish we would catch, sockeye, kings, 4-year cycles. He'd look back 12 years, 16 years. He'd look back at those cycles, and he could tell you where those fish were going to be, because the offspring of those fish would be within a tide or two of that same spot.
Right.
And so, understanding data and interpreting that and being able to put that into place. I learned that from my grandfather. So that's just a bit.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and I love to bring it back to fishing, of course.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. That's, those influences, I think that when you least expect it, you hear their voice.
Yeah.
When you least expect it, you realize that you're doing something the way you've been taught or the way you admired.
Yeah.
And you go, why am I doing it this way? Well, I'm doing it this way because I watched someone or someone taught me that. I hear people flippantly say they're self-made, and it always makes my ears perk up and go, no one is self-made. First of all, God made us. Second of all, even if you weren't aware of it, there were people you were taking notes on, people that you were admiring, people that cared enough to take a minute with you. You're lucky to have that. I never had a grandfather that I ever met, because my parents never had fathers that they had, that they met and knew. But I did have an inherited grandfather that was A.B. Label. He applied for the job when I was 7, and I think of all the lessons he taught and all the metaphors that he gave me that still to this day I think of constantly.
Right. Yeah, so good. Yeah,
we're really fortunate.
Yeah,
Troy, podcast 0 would tell you that at the end of every podcast, I try to throw out a consider this, and one of the things that I wrote, I'm going to say about a year ago, and it has to do with these highs and lows, these extremes as we started this out, and this is what I'd like our audience to consider as we put a bow on this today. It's not a one-liner, so I'm going to actually read it slowly, word for word. Consider that the incoming tide and the outgoing tide are not in conflict with one another. Holding on and letting go are a similar dance. That God orchestrates the tides as he orchestrates the transitions of life. The nightfall believes in the dawn. You've had times that you've hung on tight and you've dug in and you've seen things through in adverse climates and economies. And you've had times where you peacefully, as you were waiting, being rolled in for a 10-hour surgery, where you let go and you felt at peace. And I would argue that those two realities are brothers from a different mother. That they're not in conflict. They're a different setting orchestrated by the same internal clock. And I think of great people who have experienced the extremes, and yet when you look at them and know them, they're the same person in either setting. They can be broke or wealthy, and they don't take either one all that seriously. They can be extremely healthy or very sick, but it's the same compass that keeps it relative to them. And you live that kind of life. And this is the challenge. Consider that. Thank you for spending this time with me, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Started a long time ago, and here we are. Right?
I know. Here we are. Yeah. That was great. I loved your final word. I think that I'm gonna have to get that in writing, because that's a good one. So write that down. I think there's a lot to unpack there, even for me.
There is.
Yeah.
There is. Well, this has been an awesome challenge that I can remember back as a young professor at Seattle Pacific University, starting every class with a philosophy lesson.
Yeah.
And ending every class with a philosophy lesson. And in between, we stirred it up. And here we are, like literally 37 years later.
Yeah. And thank you for giving me a C+ on my final exam, because I thought I aced that, and he gave me a C+, and that really ticked me off. But then I realized that I had a lot to learn.
Right.
And so that was helpful.
Thank you for that. That was strategic.
Thank you for that C+.
You may not be where you are today without that C+.
That's probably true. It's probably true. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.